Every negative experience around money is still living in your body today. It's like a wound that if you still find yourself being blocked around money, receiving money, holding more money, that wound very likely is still living in your body today. And we got to clear that up. Now, I remember vividly a memory when I was around, I want to say 11, 12 years old. I don't really remember the age. But I remember that memory because I just did a belly dance performance at my mom's old restaurant. This is where she was working, and I was invited to do a belly dance performance, and it went very well. I was very excited. I was very happy with it. At the end of the performance, this old couple comes to me, and this man hands me 50 euros and he says that I deserve this because he's seen a lot of belly dancers all around the world in Turkey and Asia and whatever, and he's not seen someone quite like the way that I was moving. And so I took the money and I thanked this man. And at that time, it all happened so fast that I didn't even register what was actually happening. But just at that moment, as I was taking that money, my mother was there. And she got very upset that I took the money. And she made me feel very guilty that I took the money. And at that time, the thing that I didn't realize is that that story kept living on. It kept showing up in my life. That story, that wound that was created there around not being allowed to receive, not taking money when it was given to you, not being grateful for it and actually repelling it, telling the other person, hey, I don't want it. Thank you so much. But yeah, it feels wrong, or whatever that might be in that moment, is what actually ended up staying in my body forever, not ever, obviously, we're here healing it, but for a very long time. And it would end up showing up in my business too. When I started my business and I started charging my clients for my services, for my back then vegan health coaching services, I remember feeling guilt when they paid me this money. I remember feeling like it was wrong. Despite me literally working my butt off to deliver the best service to them, I still felt like it was wrong that they were paying me. And it took me a long time to realize how deeply all these money wounds are intertwined and how our body remembers it all. All these experiences, beyond just even money, they stay in your body. Now, the thing that I think is even more important about all of this is that it's not necessarily about the wound, but it's about the story that you end up telling yourself around what happened. So in that moment, it wasn't about receiving this money. It was about the story I added to this. It was about me now believing receiving money was not okay. And it wasn't even, if we take it a step further, it wasn't even my own story. It was my mother's story that I have taken on. In that moment, as she came in and she, of course, added her own little wound to the situation, I ended up interpreting the situation in a way that it ended up staying in my body. And today, that story kept showing up. Well, I feel it now, otherwise I wouldn't be able to talk about it. But that was a story that lived in my body for so long. And the thing about money wounds is that we have to realize that all of the wounds that we have are actually just stories. They're interpretations of the situation, of what happened. And either it's your own story that you created, because you have to understand that your brain will always try to understand what's going on. So despite there being a factual situation, okay, this person gave me the money back and blah, 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 the fact is I made a performance, I was paid for it, or I was given money for it. That's the fact. And then the story came into the picture. And I interpreted that story as that was wrong, I can't receive money, all of that kind of stuff. Now, on top of that, what ended up happening is that my mother came in and she also interpreted that situation in a certain way. And so in a way, a lot of the money stories are either yours or are someone else's that you have taken on. And now they live in your body. And now you go through life wanting to build a business, wanting to charge for your services, wanting to put yourself out there, wanting to have more success, being seen by more people. Even the fear of being seen here shows up, right? There are so many different wounds that we have of maybe you have an experience or have had an experience about you showing up fully authentically and being judged or being ridiculed or whatever that might have been. And that wound is still living there and you've now interpreted and you've created the story that it is not safe to be seen in the world. And all of this is, of course, living in your body. It's living in your nervous system. And so when we do this work, it's not just about, oh, let's just ignore, like, let's just keep going. Because I've seen a lot of that way. I've seen a lot of masculine way of just pushing through, just keep going, just ignore, just let it go. And of course, there is power in letting something go, for sure. And I've let a lot of things go in my life. And I'm sure you have too. But if you find yourself repeating the same pattern over and over again, or being blocked in creating more wealth, more abundance in your life, in whichever way, shape, or form, it doesn't always have to do around money, but you still feel like no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you show up, no matter on how many dates you go, let's say you want to meet the love of your life, you still keep finding yourself recreating the same pattern, well, obviously there's still something living in your body that we got to look at. So in order for you to start healing those wounds, it starts with you finally telling yourself, I have a story in my mind that I am something. Either that I am not good with money, either that I don't deserve to receive money, either that I don't deserve to blah, 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 blah. And how does that story show up in the day-to-day? And I want you to start becoming aware of, when am I telling myself this story? When does it show up? Because healing doesn't start with just pushing through. It's noticing, oh, I have the story about myself and about the world and about life. Can I notice it? Can I bring it to the surface? What's also really important is that all these stories now have created your concept, your self-concept about who you think you are in the world, what you think you deserve, what you think you can achieve, how much success you think you can have, how good you think you are. All of these stories have now formed your self-concept. And the problem with these stories is that we don't question these stories. They have been ingrained in our bodies for so long that these stories keep living in our bodies. And of course, what happens is they reinforce themselves. You have a story, you live life based on that story, and life keeps showing you that the story is true. And so you keep reinforcing that story, right? If you say, oh, I'm not good with money, and then because you have that belief, you end up not paying your bills, and then you get, another bill in your mailbox that you have to pay that bill, otherwise you have to pay more, or maybe you already have to pay the fees. That story is reinforcing itself. Oh, I'm not good with money. Look, I got another bill and more money that I have to pay. So of course, that story is always followed by an action. And that action is what you gotta reverse back engineer and ask yourself, okay, I'm taking this action, why? What is the story I'm telling myself about myself here? And how is that showing up? How is it repeating a pattern that I know is not serving me? Going back to that self-concept is we got to become very aware of that, because now all these stories have created who you think you are. And the things that you say about yourself is what you got to start changing as well. So if you start telling yourself, or you've been telling yourself for a long time, I'm not good with money, I am too much, I'm not good with sales, of course, again, it reinforces itself. So notice the self-concept that you have about yourself, because one of the other steps to healing those wounds is to realize that all of these stories, first of all, are not true. It's an interpretation of your brain to make up sense of the story, because your story doesn't like gaps in a situation. Your story likes to fill in information, and it's going to always fill in information that are not in your favor most of the time, right? Because your brain only wants survival for you. It doesn't want you to thrive. It doesn't want you to be happy. It doesn't want you to have success. Your brain only is thinking, I gotta survive. I gotta think, what is the best case scenario here for me to not die? Let's say it like that, okay? To make it very simple. What's going to happen is that your self-concept, then the way that you think about yourself is of course going to affect your actions. And in turn, it's going to create the results that you want or don't want. Now, the moment you start telling yourself different stories, the moment you start telling yourself, oh, I am good with money, I expect wealth everywhere I go, I get to create my dream life, whatever that might be, you will start to see that the actions are going to be different. The way that I love to build on top of that is to create positive momentum. So the way that you start changing that story is to look for positive evidence that it's true. So let's say you tell yourself, I am good with money, and then the next day you get a tax return. You see this as positive evidence and you feed your body and your brain with that. So you actually take a moment to really sit with this positive evidence that you are good with money. Because it's very, very easy to always just look at the things that are not going well and to feed off of that. You got to become very good at feeding off of the opposite, of feeding off of the positive evidence that is already showing up in your life. Now, of course, there's always going to be a connection between your self-concept and your nervous system. Your nervous system will always try to keep you safe and will try to make you do and believe things that are going to keep you in your comfort zone, right? What is a comfort zone? If you've made $2,000 your entire life, or since you started your career, that is your comfort zone. And if you want to make more, it's going to feel dangerous to the body. And it doesn't logically make sense, but it doesn't have to make logical sense. It just needs to make sense when we look at it from a nervous system level, because your nervous system will find a way to bring you back to the comfort level. And I've seen a lot of content around that the nervous system doesn't matter and blah, blah, blah. And I do think a lot of people have been creating a lot of success by being in survival mode, by being in fight or flight. You see it many times in not being sustainable. So they either reach a certain level of success because they've created it from fight or flight, and then they burn down, or they can't hold the success or the money or whatever it is that they're creating. So a much better way is to, of course, look at those money wounds, regulate yourself, look at your self-concept, and realize where is your nervous system capping you and trying to keep you safe in the amount of good or success or money that you think you deserve. Now, if you want to go a step further with this, I actually have a free 5-day magnetic money challenge come up in these 5 days. We're going to look at your wounds, we're going to reprogram your mind, we're going to look at your nervous system to really clear these things up that are keeping you in the same patterns that are not serving you. So if you want to sign up, the link is down below. I would love to see you there. And with that being said, if you like this type of content, please let me know as well. It would really mean a lot to me. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.